We're not supposed to know it. Well, maybe it's internal too.
Good morning, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Great to see you all here this morning. I hope you didn't have as much trouble as I did getting in.
The roads were clear. It was crazy.
It was crazy.
Fastest I've ever driven here.
Oh, so we have a positive experience. Oh, good. Okay.
Unbelievable.
Really wonderful.
Yeah.
We always like to hear the good side. Great. All right, everyone. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll start with some introductions, which we always do, and a little bit of housekeeping. And then we'll talk about our brainstorming time, and that's when you guys get to bring your cases, anything that you're struggling with, and try to get some crowdsourcing going on to help with that. And we also like to really hear, again, anything positive that's been going on in your world. And then after that, we'll have a presentation by Dr. Shannon Winnick from EHDI, Early Hearing Detection and Intervention. And then we'll do a little follow-up on what we did in our December meeting about, what you guys really want out of UCCCN. And then we'll wrap it up and get out of here. So with that, I'll just let you know who I am, and then we'll go right through and introduce ourselves. And so one of the things that we learned in our December meeting is that people really want to know who each other is. And so it would be great if you can say loudly who you are, what your role is, and where you work. And that would be fantastic. We'll look into doing that in other ways as well going forward. But for right now, we just can do the audio part. So I'm Mindy Tueller, and I manage the Medical Home Portal, and I also manage this meeting and have for, let's see, we're going on, this is our fourth year. We're starting our fourth year of UCCCN this month, so that's exciting. And then I'll go to you, and maybe we can ask the members on the phone to do that, because I always forget otherwise. So.
I'm Dawn Bentley, and I'm one of the Quality Improvement Specialists at the University of Utah. And we have Katie McClure and Nikki Toom and Nikki. Sorry, Nikki, I don't know how to say your last name, but you can unmute yourselves and introduce yourself.
Linda Tibbles from the Timpanogos office. I'm the care coordinator there.
Great. Hi, Melinda.
Oh, so Katie is from the Kearns Clinic. She's the nurse care manager, and she doesn't have microphone.
Okay. Katie from the Kearns Clinic, all right? Nikki was the last one. Is she able to unmute? No? Okay. Is she typing? No? Okay. So if one other person on the line, maybe she doesn't have a microphone either. So Nikki, and I'm afraid I don't know off the top of my head where Nikki works. Maybe she can tell us. Oh.
RN care manager with Busy Bee.
Busy Bee. Great. All right. Very good. Okay, welcome, Nikki. Welcome, everyone on the line. All right, so maybe we start with Pat, and we'll go around.
All right, I'm Pat Rowe, Pediatric Nurse Care Manager for Select Health Insurance.
I'm David. I work with the Connector Service with Primary Children.
I am Tomoko Tsukamoto. I also work at Primary Children's Connector Service.
Ashley Alpert, about that pediatric driver.
Alison Lewis, about the pediatric center.
Jan Boker, I'm at Memorial Pediatric Nurse Care Manager.
Jade Porter with University of Utah Health Plan Pediatric Care Manager.
I'm a Utah Utah Parent Center, parent consultant who works with the EHDI team. And it's Rachel.
My name is Rachel, sorry.
Okay.
Too many things to say. I'm Heather Adams, and right there next to her.
Okay.
Parent consultant under the EHDI program for Utah Parent Center.
Wonderful. Okay.
I'm Shannon Winnick. I am the audiology coordinator and compliance for the EHDI program.
I'm Kristen Adler. I'm the EHDI data coordinator. Thompson, Idaho Program Specialist with Eddie.
Carrie Martinez, care coordinator with the Integrated Services Program, Department of Health.
Penny Behan.
Yeah.
Walt Torres, Integrated Services, Salt Lake. Eric Richardson, Integrated Services, Utah Department of Health.
Gina Polameni, Utah Parent Center, Utah Family Voices.
Katie Hayes with the Medical Portal Research.
Jill Connor, children.
Valentine Spurry from the Autism Systems Development Program at the Utah Department of Health.
Beth Morris, Care Primary Children.
Lisa Carlson, Integrated Service Program, Hudson, Thompson.
And Tricia Young, care coordinator with Pediatrics. Wonderful. We have a nice turnout today. So I'll just take one moment to remind y'all that sometimes our audio can be a little bit of an issue. We're trying something slightly different today. We'll see if that improves our quality. But just as a general rule, if you can speak up, I know for some of us that's not the norm, but if you could try and speak up and speak clearly when you have anything to say, that would really help the people on the phone and also our recording. And then for our presenters, if we could just maybe repeat any questions that are asked, or at least try and incorporate the question in the answer, so that if that didn't come through clearly, we have a way of following what's going on at that point as well. Great. All right. Oh, I wanted to say that yesterday was Kay's birthday, so happy birthday. Is that right? Yesterday was Kay's birthday. All right. So you guys have heard this before. We're having our spring learning session this year on a Friday, March 23rd. It happens to be the last day of the break at University of Utah, meaning that there'll be a lot less traffic, so we hope that helps encourage people to join us. I will be sending out an actual calendar appointment so it gets on your calendar, but we hope that you'll plan to join us, and that will take the place of our regular March meeting. So our March meeting that month would have been the previous Wednesday, 2 days before. It's not going to do it. We'll be there Friday, so we hope that having noticed this far out will help you to be able to attend. And then speaking of that learning session, so we're excited. I think this is going to be a learning session where we really talk about kind of some of the core things around care coordination, and that is to understand what parents and families need from their perspective. And so we have a panel of clinicians, including some specialists, who will be joining us for the second part of the learning session. But the first part of the learning session, we want to have families with complex kids. And so we're appealing to you all who work with families with these kids to see if you could maybe pre-identify or try to pre-identify some that would meet a couple of criteria. That would be that they are good communicators, that they would think comfortable being up there in front of a group and be okay with that. And then also that they would be, interested in helping us have some productive conversation around care coordination, so that we really have a positive environment there and work towards, identifying what's working well and what's not working well. And the idea is that we'll have some specific questions for them, and then we'll also just see where the discussion takes us. And that will set the stage for the second part, where we'll have those clinicians and specialists try and answer the same questions and maybe respond to some of those things that they heard from the parents' perspective. So I think it'll be a really good learning session. I'm excited about it. And of course, this doesn't need to be limited to you. If you have others in your practice who you think would benefit from attending this learning session, we hope that they'll join as well. So we should have plenty of room. And we'll do it again where we've done it before, which is in the Officers Club up there in Fort Douglas. And parking shouldn't be an issue. We have a parking lot set aside. So we hope you'll all consider joining us. And then again, I sent out an email on Friday asking this very thing. So would love your help with that. And of course, we need to have these families be okay with us reaching out and asking them. So that's the part we really need your help with, is sort of letting them know that this is happening, asking them if they'd be willing to talk with us about participating. They can always say no, but I need to have their permission to reach out to them first. So that would be so helpful. All right, so this is your time. This is when we get to kind of let our guards down a little bit. If you're struggling with anything, this is a great time to share it with this group. Everyone here understands what you're going through and may in fact have some solutions for what you need. We'll also look at the medical portal to see if there are resources that might be able to help you as well. And on that note, if you have awareness of new resources, we love hearing about those. Sometimes we don't always have those on our radar, and so we add those to the portal service directory when we find them. And we just love to hear whatever's going on with you, including, you know, positive and not so positive things, to see if this group can help you with them. So if anybody has anything they'd like to share, it's your time. So one thing I'll throw out there is that we like to hear how past cases have been resolved too. So if anyone wants to give us an update on something that was, you know, they shared with the group before, maybe had some difficulties with, if you want to talk about that again, that would be great.
I have one that I've talked about before, that it's taken a village, and we're still working with the family. The initial contact was because of the 16-year-old daughter that had Danny Walker syndrome. This family adopted probably 12 kids, 3 of them still live at home. They're all severely delayed. They're 16, 20, and 21. The 20 and 21-year-olds have syndromes and autism and all that as well. The one is a character and walks around in his diaper and says the F-bomb and the other word. And this mom was left by her husband. He left her for drugs and other women, and she found herself moving from an 8,000 square foot home a couple years ago to a trailer home. None of the kids had SSI or DSPD. They weren't on the wait list. They had no wheelchairs. They had no transportation. Mom was just ordering groceries through ordering service. They had not a good relationship with their primary care physician, and I have to admit that they were very, very difficult to work with. So we partnered, the UCCCN court liaison, who I think is wonderful, that she reached out to try to get some help in care coordination. She came and talked with me, and then I called Christine Evans at Utah Family Voices, and the 3 of us have been working on this for the past 6 months, and it has been hard. Mom's gone to the hospital 2 or 3 times, has nearly died. She's lost half of her blood. She started taking 3 NSAIDs because her back hurts so bad, but they don't have a lift for kids. So she's bled out from a bleeding ulcer. The last one was like, I don't know, 10 days ago. So anyhow, since then, we got a wheelchair ordered. We found a PT to do the eval for free, which was amazing. And so we got the doctor's time and ordered that. We got a wheelchair coming. We've got a lift coming. We've got emergency EHDI for all 3 of the kids now. They're working on, Mom's interviewing for her caseworker for the EHDI, but we've got workers who need to help her lift and everything. We've got them all moved to a new primary care physician, and the 16-year-old had her first visit with him yesterday. And a lot of good things are happening. It's been a long road this morning, so dismayed at the healthcare system, and has been called for neglect and abuse, so she's got a real defensive front, and most people just don't want to work with her because she's kind of a pain in the butt. But you see why she's like that, and all 3 of us that work with her see that, and it's just been one of the most amazing experiences, one of the hardest. And, you know, it's been 2 steps forward and 1 step back the entire time, and we're still not there yet, but we're getting a lot closer. So it's been really good. So that was one I brought up months ago, but yeah, it's not an easy fix most of the time. I'll tell you with the family so much.
Right.
But it's been good.
That's great news.
Yeah. They are amazing.
They are.
So grateful.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope everyone is aware of what a great resource Utah Family Voices and the Utah Parent Center are. Of course, we're here because they've allowed us to be, and we really appreciate it. Thank you. Great. Is there anybody else who would like to share anything, another follow-up, or did that prompt you at all to come up with anything else? I heard something, I've been listening to a series on NPR a little bit, and maybe some of you have heard it too, about the prevalence of sexual abuse of individuals with disabilities. And so typically the stories are about, not children. But obviously, they were children once, and they were, and potentially had some of this happen before they were of age. But that's been pretty difficult to listen to, and I guess it's a much greater rate of abuse, and you can understand why. They often can't advocate for themselves well. One of the things that was heartening in a piece that I heard yesterday was about prosecuting these cases, and the reason that they're so hard to do is because many of the individuals can't produce the detailed information to help with that prosecution, like time and location. And one of the reasons that that's further complicated is because in many cases, prosecutors aren't using the right techniques to talk with them. They're treating them as though they were more typically functioning adults with their questions, whereas if they ask them very literal, concrete kinds of questions, they get a lot better information. And so it just was that flag again to me that if we ask our questions in the right way, we often can get a lot farther with the families and the patients, with concrete questions. And they also talked about making sure that it's a friendly environment when they interview these folks, and they don't have a lot of badges and guns and uniforms around. And so that was just another one of those things. If we can, try and soften things, come with an approach that is understanding, ask questions in the right way, that we get a lot farther. So, not trying to be a downer on the meeting today, but it's a terrible thing, and hopefully it's not one that you all are going to encounter, but that there could be some lessons learned from others who are dealing with this. It could be beneficial in how we interact with families as well. Again, those really concrete questions. I'm terrible at using euphemisms. I do it all the time and assume that everybody understands what I'm saying. That's not good. You need to have words that have a very literal, concrete meaning. So, all right. Well,
is now a good time to have an announcement as well?
By all means, yeah.
I just wanted to announce that currently Utah Department of Health, Maternal Child Health Bureau, we're in the process of re-releasing a request for proposal. We are looking for providers to help staff approximately 22 to 24 traveling clinics per year in rural areas of the state. These are going to be in Vernal, Richfield, Moab/Price, and Blanding. We're trying to get the same group of providers to do all of the clinics just for consistency's sake, and it definitely makes it easier for travel because we fly out of the state aeronautics on a 6 or an 8 seat plane down to these sites. In the past, these were 2-day clinics, so we would go down for 2 days, stay overnight in the location, fly back the next evening. We are doing a series now. This is going to be 1-day clinics, fly in the morning, fly out at night. Might make it a little more, appealing to folks who would consider doing this because they're not spending the night away from home with their families. This first year, just to get things set up, we're running on a federal fiscal year, which is October 1st to September 30th. We will be looking at just a couple of clinics at each site, one per quarter, between probably April 1st and September 30th this year. Going into year 2, we will go into an every other month clinic schedule, so we will be at each location every other month. The RFP is right now going through just some modifications. We didn't fill that in the first go-around, but we quite reached the kind of the target population we were hoping would respond, and so we're doing some modifications. We can anticipate it will be released next week. So if you know of providers in any of your practices that might be able to do a couple of days a month, we're trying to do these on Fridays in most locations. San Juan County requested we do them on Thursdays because they said everybody hits the road on Fridays after school down in San Juan County. So they asked if we do Thursdays. The other 3 sites, though, we would be doing Fridays. We're looking for experience, so pediatricians' experience working with children with special health care needs, developmental psychologists audiologists who have experience with ADOS administration to, look at some of the kids on the autism spectrum, speech pathology, audiology, occupational and physical therapy, and neurology. And when this request goes out, it goes out of state purchasing, and it comes as some sort of a request from SciQuest. It sounds like somebody's trying to get you up for pharmaceuticals or a magazine or something. Anyway, SciQuest is a state bid site. And I think some of the folks we had alerted to this got something from SciQuest and said, what the heck is that? So anyway, that's what we're looking at. We anticipate, again, 22 to 24 clinics per year once we hit year 2. We're hoping to contract this out for approximately 5-year period.
Wow, okay.
And the thing that stinks is I'm not able to offer answer a lot of questions to anybody who submits questions because I'm on the selection committee, and so this whole sense of propriety and state rules and all of the rest it supersedes. But we have a really good purchasing agent, Amy Gerard, and I can refer anyone to her, and she can answer a lot of questions.
Wonderful.
If that's something that sounds like maybe folks in your practice might be interested in doing and have an interest in rural health, this is a really great opportunity to go out where there are little to no services, but the need is very high. The sense of accomplishment and fulfillment in these areas is amazing. I've done these clinics for years, and it's just a truly great experience.
Thank you. Is there a chance that we could help disseminate that RFP? Does it just have to go through one channel, or at the point that
Well, it's
it's
interesting what they try to do. They do it 2 ways. They go through what's called commodity codes, which again sounds like you're purchasing wheat or pork bellies or something like that. Basically, anybody who's responded to a request for proposal and falls into a certain category. So it might be medical category, and that includes occupational and physical therapists, nutrition, and nursing homes, for example, might all fall under one commodity code. So there are 3 or 4 different commodity codes, and anybody who's submitted a request in the SciQuest system in the past is included in an email for that. We've also given a list of names and phone numbers and emails to our purchasing agent at State Purchasing, and she enters that information into the system, so the request goes specifically to those people. And I think possibly we may have submitted some just kind of generic emails in the past that went maybe to some weird inbox. So it's great if we have an actual name of a real live person who would actually see an email, and I think that increases the chances of someone, taking notice of that. So if you do have anybody that you think might be interested, you can send me an email, and I will then forward that information on to our purchasing agent.
Great. Okay. And if you don't know Eric's email, you can always get in touch with me, and I'll make sure he sees it. Terrific. I hope that goes well. That's great. All right. Let's go ahead and jump into our main presentation. So Dr. Winnick, or Shannon. So I think you can just click the arrows to move through that. If you have any trouble, I'll just be right with you. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm Shannon Winnick. I am the EHDI, we say EHDI, it's Early Hearing Detection and Intervention. I'm the Audiology and Compliance Coordinator. I work a lot with the hospitals in getting them to be where they need to be according to national and state standards. So this is our EHDI team. It's grown recently. So we've got Stephanie McVicker on the top as our program manager. Krista is here. She's our EHDI data coordinator. She's going to be passing some brochures. Oh, okay. So every baby has to be reported for their newborn hearing screening results, and Krista reviews all of those and manages all of the data quality and all of that. Jenny Pedersen, she is our Children's Hearing Aid Program Coordinator. So anytime you've got a family with a newly diagnosed child, this goes up to age 6, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but she can process applications Milestones are, these, Heather and Rachel, are both new members of our team, and they help us with contacting families at any point during the EHDI process, whether it's families haven't come back for their screening or diagnostic, anywhere at that point, even at the point of diagnosis, if family needs answers to questions or anything like that. Jill Becker, she does our CMV coordination and monitors all of the CMV data. She works a lot with the physicians' offices and trying to get CMV results, and also if families haven't gone for their CMV testing, she'll contact the physician's office, but also she's contacting families at about the 2-week mark and saying, hey, we noticed you haven't passed your hearing screening. You should really go get that CMV testing because the timeline is critical of getting it in before 21 days. Courtney Ashton, she is our follow-up coordinator. She contacts midwives and a lot of families too in trying to track down where these babies are in the process. And then Rachel. Let's see. So there's our building. For those of you that, we've got primary children's, we're kind of tucked over there at the, you can see where the arrow is. The arrow is right at my desk. So it's a nice place to be. These are all of the programs that are at the Children with Special Healthcare Needs program. I'm sure most of you are familiar with them. We have 3 audiology mandated programs, so we kind of globally call it the EHDI program, but it also includes the Cytomegalovirus Public Health Initiative and also the CHAP program. So nationally, what we call the EHDI program, the EHDI goals is the 136, and that's screening all babies before 1 month of age, diagnosing before 3 months of age, and enrolling babies that have been diagnosed as deaf or hard of hearing before 6 months of age. Before the EHDI program really got going, before it was mandated and such around the states, we were identifying kids at around 2.5, 3 years of age, which obviously caused a lot of language delays and cognitive, social, emotional, all of that kind of stuff. And then once we got newborn hearing screening going, we are getting kids diagnosed at about 2 to 3 months of age. Incidence of hearing loss is 3 per 1,000. Just looking at our CDC data in Utah, we're about 1.9 per 1,000. And then, so again, just early detection and management, getting into early intervention is essential for the acquisition of language, and that's whether you've got a family that is going to use oral language or sign language. We have to know either way. So we have to know the doorway of the ear. So we hear with our brains, right? So we have to know that doorway is broken in order to know what communication method that we're going to utilize. So Utah's a little bit different than the national standards in that we have a 1/2-3/6, and this comes because of the CMV initiative that was started in July of 2013. So we need all of our babies to have their inpatient screening and outpatient screening by 14 days in order for the baby to get over to the lab to have their CMV testing before 21 days of age. And that 21 days of age is critical so that we know that we can rule out a congenital versus an acquired CMV infection. So Utah is a two-stage screening state. Some states just do a screening and then go right to a diagnostic. Utah does an inpatient screening at typically 10 to 12 hours, and then right before the baby discharges. And then the outpatient screening happens at 10 to 14 days of age. One caveat with the CMV testing is if the baby happens to fail, but they never get that follow-up screening, they still qualify for CMV testing. Once you're hitting that 10 and 14-day mark, if you've still got a refer, then you just send them on for that CMV testing. So our protocol is if we've got a baby that comes back and passes, we're going to just tell them, routine hearing, speech and language milestone monitoring, parent concern, that kind of stuff. But if we have a patient that refers, we're going to gonna go ahead and refer them on for diagnostic testing, and also the CMV PCR testing. We really try to spend a lot of time with having hospitals educating families that it's urine or saliva testing and not blood. The blood's not sensitive enough. Saliva they use it pretty equally, but saliva has the risk of having a false positive for breastfeeding. Once we get to the diagnostic phase, again, if we get normal hearing, then we just say continue to monitor, make sure your child's developing those milestones. If we get the diagnostic where we say we've got a hearing loss, then we get babies to be referred over to Baby Watch Early Intervention, and also we actually send a referral to USDB PIP, the Parent Infant Program, who is connected to Baby Watch. They're the provider of early intervention services for children who are deaf or hard of hearing. So once they get that diagnosis, they have 2 days to refer them to early intervention, and then I believe it's 45 days from the point that early intervention makes contact with the family that they get that IFSP and services going. We like to have the babies fit within 1 month of diagnosis. Obviously, just getting auditory access is critical, or again, if they choose to go with the sign language route, just the earlier the better for language acquisition. Just as kind of some data about Utah compared to national, Utah really does a great job with getting their babies screened. We screen over 99% of the babies. Just to pat ourselves on the back, we used to not get a lot of the out-of-hospital birth babies screened, but now we're getting, through grant funding, we were able to provide screening equipment and such, and we were able to get over 90% of out-of-hospital birth babies screened, which is pretty incredible. The diagnosing before 3 months, among the ones that, the children that receive a diagnosis, there's about 75% of them are getting before 3 months of age, and 75% enrolled into early intervention. The loss to follow-up rates, that's been through a lot of incredibly hard work. Back in 2011, not only Utah, but nationally, the loss to follow-up was about 50%. And through a lot of hard work, and we're actually at about 13% for loss to follow-up, but typically in that loss to follow-up category, we know where these families are. We just aren't, they're kind of a passive refusal. So if we take those passive refusals out, we're at about 3% of babies that we don't know where they are. So some of you may encounter in your practices, we changed our document up a little bit to help with notifying physicians, and then this letter out that says, please encourage your families to come back for their screening appointments. And if it's not your patient, contact us and we'll figure out what it is in the process. And just start to seconding, this is our standing order that we created. So, in here, this form, using this process. I sent the baby cells second to CMV testing. The reason that we set it up this way was initially the families would have the failed second screening, and they would go to have to go to their pediatrician's office to get the order, and then go back to the lab. And we were finding that we were losing babies that way. So we created this order. This form is able to be provided from the screening staff to the family, and they can go directly from the hearing screening right down to the lab. So some programs are faxing this form over to the pediatrician, but a lot of them are just giving them, well, I don't know, are they sending this form? I have to double check with Krista. to the pediatrician's office or just a letter?
Just a letter.
Okay. So the next is we're notifying you that your baby failed, the second newborn hearing screening. It doesn't require any action on your part because we've already got this order, but just notifying you that the baby failed. And again, if you happen to follow up with them, please encourage them to keep their diagnostic appointments and CMV testing. If your baby does pass, then we'll also send a letter saying that the baby did pass, and then here's the risk factors to keep an eye out for, but otherwise there's no further testing. So these are our Utah Parent Center EHDI parent consultants. Rachel started with us back in August, and Heather started with us in November. We have already noticed a tremendous difference with just how families react when we contact them about getting follow-up services, and that they're just open up to them a lot easier. So it's been an amazing addition to our program. It's so funny, Heather had a child just recently that she, the one that had atresia, and she was so stressed about it. She's like, I couldn't sleep all night, and she was so cute, but she was so on top of getting baby, because the baby had never gone for a diagnostic evaluation. He was 18 months. So really that was a breakdown in the system. They should have had a diagnostic, even though one ear is normal, the other one is obviously, we can't guarantee that it's not without the diagnostic testing. So she worked a lot on working with the family to get into an audiologist, finding, anyway, just different resources and things. So these are the things that they can help us with that are just amazing. Some of the things that I just kind of was thinking about last night was if you're communicating with families, you know, just never minimizing the abnormal result, never saying that it's probably just fluid, because behind that probably just fluid is a severe hearing loss. So we have to make sure that we don't send them out the door with that thought that, oh, it's no big deal, it's going to clear out and no problem. So, you know, of course, we encounter parents, the longer that they go without their follow-up, I know my baby can hear. I mean, we hear this even at 2 weeks. You really can't tell that your baby can hear. They may hear some sounds and not others. So just kind of reinforcing that, yeah, your baby, you know, your baby may hear, but we want to make sure that they can hear all of the sounds in order to acquire language. Considerations as far as diagnostic testing, we need to get them in before 6 months, 6 to 9 months, because otherwise they need a sedated ABR, and obviously that can be a big issue with our medically complex kids. If family won't follow up due to cost, location, et cetera, contact us or our consultants, and we can kind of figure out ways of where we can get families some help. One project that we do up at ours for the Richfield Farnell community and also down in Blanding is we provide tele-ABR services. So it's free to the family. And so it's just like if you consider the kids that are down in Blanding, that's a 5-hour trip plus the diagnostics and a 5-hour trip back. It's a big deal. So to be able to provide that service. And we also, I mean, we don't advertise this, but if there is a family that just will not follow up because of cost or whatever, and they're here locally, they're welcome. You can contact us, and we can consider providing the screening ourselves or a diagnostic evaluation. We kind of take that as on a case-by-case basis, but just because ideally they're going to end up, if they have hearing loss, they're going to be over at Primary Children's anyway. But if we know that we're not going to get families back in, then that's a service that we can provide. After the baby has seen the ENT, this is a problem that we encounter a lot. They've got the middle ear problem, and the ENT on his end says, oh, things look great. But nobody ever says, hey, you need to go back to audiology and finish that rollout of, you know, getting the baby screened or getting the diagnostic, and so then we kind of languish. At the point of, if we have kids that are complex, we've got one screening that they never, or that they refer on, always consider an EI referral and specifically to the parent-infant program. At least if they aren't providing regular routine services, at least their audiology program can keep saying, hey, have you got that diagnostic, or do you need to come in and we can complete it here? They have a lot of resources with getting family assistance that way so that we don't lose them. And again, our parent consultants can contact any family at any point in the process and help answer questions about what the testing is, or if they are having challenges with hearing aids, anything like that, and we can help get them kind of pointed in the right direction. So our CHAP program, the Children's Hearing Aid Program, the qualifications are that they have to be younger than 6 years old, meet the financial criteria of less than 300% of the federal poverty. If they're under 3 years old, we require them to be enrolled in early intervention if they receive the hearing aids, just because that's such a critical part of management of the deaf and hard of hearing children. Oh, and we have to be able to roll out or say that they can't get hearing aids through Medicaid or private insurance. And this little guy is one of our CHAP recipients. We are providing bone conduction hearing aids, which is really nice. We weren't providing that before. And also a requirement is that they have to be seen by a pediatric audiologist. We all know that the pediatric specialized people have special training and things that you wouldn't be able to get out in the community. So they'll follow up with an ENT typically to be cleared for amplification, and then the parents agree that they'll maintain audiological follow-up and hearing aids. And if they happen to be fit with a CI, then they return the hearing aids so that we can provide them to other families in need. And typically that goes to our hearing aid program that's for children that are older than 6, because we don't have legislative funding to provide the hearing aids. If those new hearing aids from this CHAP program happen to come back because they've gotten a CI, then we'll put it in that other loaner bank. And that's pretty much it. This is our website and email addresses, and under the EHDI parents at utah.gov will go to not only the parents but our team as well, so that we can kind of answer any questions.
Do you have, for parents or family members that are deaf or hard of hearing, do you have signers in your clinic?
We will provide that service.
Okay.
We don't have actually a clinic anymore.
Oh, okay.
But if I happen to have on that case-by-case basis a family that needs it, we will provide it. Yeah.
So because I work for an insurance company, and often I see hearing aids for these children, particularly that are syndromish, craniofacial deformities, that kind of thing. I see them get denied for whatever the reason. Is it appropriate that I could send them to you guys when they're younger than 6 and see if they could get hearing aids or help from you guys then?
Yes. Yes.
Do you need a letter of denial?
Yes.
Okay.
That's part of the requirement.
Working with you the ADR telehealth in the rural areas, what is the requirement for those families? Do they need to be in like a hospital setting? What is
We have it at Minnow Basin Medical Center, and then at Blue Mountain.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So they'll go in and then.
Yeah.
Wow.
So then we're just hanging out in our office, and we can run everything from there and take the equipment over, and yeah.
Good question. What happens after they turn the age of 6? I mean, what's the transition?
Unfortunately, there's not a lot of, well, there's not at all. We have our, I'm blanking on, thank you, our HARP program that is purely through donations. We get donations from the community, through CHAP recipients that don't need them anymore. So it's a lot more limited, but if the family doesn't have access to hearing aids, that's definitely a resource that we can find some hearing aids.
And what was it called?
HARP, Hearing Aid Recycling Program. I should know these better, but.
We haven't used it a lot.
Yeah, it doesn't come up.
We haven't had as many people using it.
Yeah. A lot of times it's school districts that will contact us for the HARP program.
I was just gonna say, a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to sit in with Shannon while she did one of these remote audiology things. It was quite amazing to see the people on the other end fitting the child up and, kind of getting it all situated. And all of a sudden, Shannon took over the Wurlitzer and she was, controlling everything. So it was quite amazing to see. It kind of felt like telemedicine, telehealth at its finest. So it was quite an amazing way to get the expert to.
It was a little dicey in the beginning. We started at a midwife home in Mount Pleasant, and internet connection was not great. So the dropout of 28 times in one, the test is running, but I lose connection, so I have to go back and connect. It was pretty terrible. Once we got connected with UNO Basin, we actually have an office of teleaudiology in their hospital, so it's great. Yeah.
Fabulous question. Is there someone here who can educate me about the parent-infant program?
Well, how much education?
From day one to wherever we are, I know nothing about that, and if it's a resource that I can send parents to, I'd like to be able to.
So any child that's, birth to 3 is an early intervention.
Okay.
Any child that failed 2 OAE newborn hearing screening tests technically qualifies for PIP services. So anytime you've got kids in the chronic middle ear, they should be referred over. Any kind of diagnosis of permanent hearing loss, typically the audiologists are pretty good about getting these children referred over to PIP. It's the audiologist's responsibility to make that referral once that diagnosis happens. For whatever reason, every once in a while a kid will fall through the cracks, and it typically tends to be the ones that have middle ear issues because they get kind of lost in that ENT vortex of let's watch and wait, and instead of, we've tried to advocate a lot about let's not have the thought of watch and wait, because in that time you never know how long it takes the fluid to clear out, and they're missing time for services. So it can stop their services at any time, so it's better that we're kind of a little bit more aggressive and saying, oh, I wish we would have been enrolled them earlier. So pretty much anybody that you've got any kind of hearing concerns about, as long as they've failed 2 hearing screenings, they're going to qualify.
And we can send out, we have the PIP referral form, if that's helpful, we can send it to Mindy, that you can use to refer directly to them.
How often?
Sorry. Early intervention laws, like if the child is in early intervention, they will do a screener at entry, and if they fail, they automatically refer to PIP.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then they'll work together, and then at transition, they'll decide, do we want to go with the school, that's second line, or do we want to go with the special ed? So they kind of work together. They'll both hold IFSTs, have to be there at the meeting.
Yep.
Regardless of if PIP is the chosen early intervention provider, your case manager is still going to be through Baby Watch with your local early intervention. So, for instance, if you live in Granite School District, you're going to be referred to Baby Watch, who's the mothership. They're going to send out DDI, Vantage, because that's the area, early intervention. DDI is going to be your case manager will be with DDI. They'll work with PIP. PIP will be one of your provided services.
I don't know why, but maybe you can explain, Krista, why PIP likes to be notified as opposed to going directly through the local.
We don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, so if you want your secrets, just go directly to PIP.
I mean, of course, they don't have as many people working for them, and they need the referrals and the resources as much as they can get. So they like to be involved in the process so that they're not losing children, and you're 3%, or they keep track of them and they can follow through and stuff. So that's why. I mean, that's a big.
So our audiologists don't refer to early intervention, as in baby watch or DDI, they refer directly to PIP.
Can you say too, through PIP, deaf mentor services are offered, and PIP is 0 to 3 years old, but with a deaf mentor, you don't get a deaf mentor until your child is 1. You have that service for 3 years. So my daughter, we adopted her at 2. We only had PIP services for a year, but we were able to have our deaf mentor until this last October and she's 5.5. Wow. So you have that access to the language, you know, for 3 full years, regardless of when. Wow. You get that through.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you so much.
And I just put handouts over here, there's information on CME and, the CHAP program, and, hand sanitizer, and if you need CME materials, there's an order form too.
So, yeah, we have an order form for any of the brochures, toothbrushes, hand sanitizer, lip balm. Excellent.
They used to be my neighbors when I was up at their office, and I just say they're very competent, bright, talented staff, but they're just fun too. So their heart's in the right place, and they're just awesome, great people. So we're in good hands. Our kids are in good hands with these folks.
Eric actually just described you guys as naughty.
Well, and don't whisper something to Gina. But anyway, it was never a dull moment up there with that, so always fun.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. That's great. So we'll make sure that, you know, the contact information goes out with the resources of the month email, and then make sure you get the handouts, and, you know, for any reason you don't, for instance, folks on the phone, let us know if there's anything we can get to you more specifically, because there's a lot of great stuff over there on that table. Although I'm not sure we can get you the hand sanitizer. All right, well, I know some of you joined us in our December meeting, and we had a great turnout and a great meeting. It was terrific, but perhaps some of you didn't, and so this will bring you up to speed, I hope, with what happened. So what we did is we convened about 5 smaller groups and had kind of someone taking notes for the discussion that happened in each of those groups. And we basically just asked some questions about, you know, what's working for you in UCCCN, what's not. What can we do differently or better or increase, et cetera. And so we have some takeaways that I wanted to share with you. And this is a great time for further comments and discussion as well. So please feel free to stop me and to speak up. And Carrie, I know you're there. So
I can speak.
Okay, all right, great. Okay. So some of the positives that came out of it, sort of across the board, is that the networking opportunities that come out of this are really, really enjoyed by people, and so we're thrilled about that. And also the resources of the month. And so obviously those will continue, and we'll try and figure out ways to improve those as well. I don't quite have the time that I want, but I am really interested in making those resources of the month emails all available in one spot on a website for you, and have ways to sort of index those so you can get back to them easily and quickly. So, as far as the networking goes, we brainstormed a few ideas in our planning team around maybe trying to make these meetings not go quite all the way to 10 o'clock when possible. We give you guys a few minutes at the end if you'd like to connect and chat before you feel like you need to get back on the road. That might happen today as well. And then we also like the idea of maybe occasionally just having a networking meeting. And so I'll talk about that on the next slide, ways to kind of frame a meeting like that. We also have some thoughts about making sure that people really understand who else is participating. We could do that perhaps by having more information on the cards that are in front of you, so that folks could see those, and that might mean we need to change how we set up the room and can see one another, but we want to make sure that you know who your colleagues are here in this room, which could allow you to, again, follow up with them on other questions and do that next networking piece. So we'll work on that as well. We also talked a little bit about ways to make sure that what you're learning and gaining here could also benefit others that you might work with, and we wondered if there might be a way to identify some sort of a clinical champion in your practices or the office manager or both, and include them on those resources of the month if they would be interested. And so my hope is that we'll also have another way of looping some of those folks into what we do here at UCCCN. There's a practice managers group through the Utah chapter of the AP, and we're hopeful that we can connect with them in some way soon. But you know, if you want to approach someone in your practice about whether or not they'd be receptive to getting those emails, which we try not to send out too often, we'd be very delighted to add them to our email list that's a little more selective. We have 2 email lists. So we send all of our meeting information to a core list, and then when we do our resources of the month, it adds on additional people so that they're not always getting the notifications about the meeting dates and times, but they are always getting the resources. And so anyone who would like to be on that list is very welcome. Additionally, someone brought up we talked, a number of groups talked about the needs for understanding what's going on with DSPD and Medicaid. Because there are some changes that take place there. Sometimes they're small, sometimes they're big, but making sure that that information gets out there when those changes happen. And we're fortunate that Utah Family Voices keeps track of those things pretty well, and so they've committed to making sure that if something needs to be announced, that we do that as part of our announcements in our meetings. And then if there's something big that changes, for instance, something that came out of the legislative session, that's really going to affect families and providers, that we would take some time in a meeting and actually present in detail on that. So we're committed to doing that. And then kind of along that line, the idea of, is there a chance that we could get someone from Medicaid to just come attend these meetings and then they can answer questions for us right in here? Well, the answer is no. Sorry, and that's I think largely because the Medicaid staff is really, they're short-staffed right now. I just don't see any way that we would get that. But Gina said that it really should actually be a Department of Workforce Services eligibility worker, and that she may be able to have some contacts there. So we'll work on that. But no promises. Sorry, that would be ideal. It would be fantastic. Some of the other things that really rose to the top as far as topics for presentations or discussions include financial support. The idea of having a meeting where we just come together and we talk about all the ways that we can help families connect with support for a variety of things that would require finances and money otherwise. And so I think we could, the UCCCN planning staff could come up with a list at the beginning that we can add to that as a group, and I think that would be very useful to have that list, readily available for you all and updated as much as possible. So I really like that idea. That I think came out of almost every group in that set of the small groups. And then kind of right along with that is how to navigate insurance, and of course that goes back to some degree to Medicaid and Medicaid changes as well. So that might get a little trickier, but I really like that. Again, we have a lot of collective knowledge in this room, and I think it would be great if we not only have a meeting to discuss all of this, but we get it documented some way and make that available to you guys. So we like that idea quite a bit. We also heard that the IEP stuff is really helpful. And what we learned from Gina, who actually stepped out, but what we learned from Gina is that it's probably the most helpful in August. And that's because even though our August meeting may in fact happen a day or two after most schools have started, when the understanding of those things really usually starts to happen is shortly after school begins. Ideally, families would be getting together to do their IEP meetings in the summer before the school year begins, but I don't think that's what happens. Gina came back in, so I'll put you on the spot really fast, but we talked about at our planning meeting with Gina that August is really the best time to have the IEP cycle for meetings. It's timely, it gives care coordinators who are about to hear these things from families the tools they need just in time. That sounds about right?
Yep.
Okay. So I think we like that idea. We'll try and make that a standing meeting in August. And then kind of circling back to this idea of networking, hey, you guys have such great experiences and things that you can contribute. We would like to not always have somebody else up here, but we would like to have you tell us what you're doing in your practices so that others can learn. And so that doesn't mean you have to create a PowerPoint and come up and stand up here and feel awkward and on the spot. But what it could mean is that we might have a topic that we'll let everybody know about, and then ask that people would, kind of think a little bit about what it is that you're doing in your practice, and then come prepared to just chat about it right from your seats. Maybe we'll be in that more circular formation, and then we'll just bounce ideas off of each other, because I think that's where some of our greatest strengths lie, is hearing from each other and getting those new ideas and asking those questions. And so I really like the idea of doing more of those kinds of meetings as we go forward. And I think that'll give us that chance to get to know each other even better, and then leverage what people have already done. We don't need to reinvent the wheel all the time. Okay, just a couple more. So one of the things that came out of the group that I was talking with is that we started talking a little bit about health literacy and how that can be an issue when you're trying to talk with your families about, whatever, creating the care plan and next steps and those kinds of things. But it's more than just their literacy levels per se. It's also where they're at that point in time emotionally, because where you're at emotionally can affect where you're at cognitively, right? So it's really trying to assess some of the unspoken things that are going on there, and look at body language and understand kind of that bigger picture as well. And then once you understand that they can't take anything more on at that point in time, also remember so that the next time that you talk with them, you're still trying to assess, is now better? Can we introduce this idea now? Can we talk about, these next steps now? That's complicated. It's hard stuff. And so if we are able to sort of bring some tools to the table for a conversation like that, then that's what we're going to try and do. It's a little bit like motivational interviewing, I think, that maybe tweaked a little bit. And then it kind of goes again to the next bullet, which is identifying patients' needs, and really making sure that the family is the locus of that planning process, and then talking about that on a regular, repeated basis, and hearing from the families what it is they need. And so we might want to bring in some families to hear their stories as well to help with that. We've done that a long time ago, almost 4 years ago. We did a meeting like that, and it was a great meeting. So I think we'd like to bring in some families to hear from them directly. And then one of the other things was, again, how do we coordinate all the coordinators? So we'd be very interested in hearing about how you guys do that. I'm sure it's to some degree a case-by-case basis. So if you've got a family who's got a complex kiddo, and there are a lot of other folks in the mix, other specialist offices that you're coordinating with, how do you do all that? That would be really helpful to understand. So if there's anything else that those of you who maybe weren't here at the December meeting, or now you're thinking about something else that didn't get discussed in your small group, this is a great time if you would like to throw out some ideas, or if you want to, root for something that we have done in the past to do again, do more. This is a great time for you to share that. The one thing I'll mention is that we have done field trips to Shriners in the past. I think they were very well received. The only thing that we've struggled with there is that sometimes traffic can be a real difficulty for folks, because it's not only coming to Salt Lake, it's getting up through those surface streets that have a lot of traffic to the university at that time, at 8:30 in the morning. So I think, when have we done it in the past, Jill? Did we do some summertime that might have been a little bit easier?
Yeah, and that's a great idea.
So maybe in June, we could think about a June Shriners visit, because they're just tremendous. When you walk through Shriners and see what they're doing, it's a really good meeting. You feel great at the end of that meeting. So that's something we can think about as well. Okay, well, I won't put you on the spot, but feel free. We love feedback. We need feedback. So if you come up with other ideas, if you're not comfortable saying saying something in front of the group. We like criticism too. That's how, we learn and grow. So you can always just email me, and that's terrific. We really appreciate your feedback. So we want to improve. All right, so in wrapping up, oops, I didn't change that last slide, did I? In fact, I think it's February 17th. No, February 21st. I think it's February 21st is our next meeting. And in addition to reminding you not to forget validations, I'd also ask to make sure that you signed in. So we need to have a record of everyone who comes to these meetings for grant purposes. So it's really important that we ask you to sign in every time. I see chocolate chip cookies over there. Please be sure to help yourself to more food before you go. And looks like we've got a few minutes if you want to chat with one another. So help yourself. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, if I can recall, too many care plans lately, so I hope they all know.